Welcome to the Special Needs Connection, the podcast that provides you helpful strategies, resources, and connections to help you on your family's journey. Hosted by Colin Meeks, a certified financial planner, focusing on special needs financial planning and all the challenges that come with raising a child with special needs. For our special needs planning checklist, 14 questions to help get your plan started, go to www.marylandfinancialadvocates.com. That's www.marylandfinancialadvocates.com. Now, here's the latest episode of the Special Needs Connection.
For Maryland Financial Advocates, this is Colin Meeks, and we're going to sort of have a roundtable discussion today on the newly approved ABLE accounts. And this is primarily for people that are raising a child with a disability, either physical or mental. And the ABLE account is a tool that you can use to sort of help you financially to qualify for certain benefits and save money in ways that you may not have been able to save money for before this came out. So on the podcast today, I have Ryan Stark with Maryland Financial Advocates, and our guest expert is Adam Zimmerman. And Adam's an attorney with a Baltimore law firm, Thomas, Ronald, Cooper, and Krumpe. And Adam's primary practice is helping families that have children with special needs, helping them plan around the various laws and making strategies available to them so that their child can not just survive, but also thrive for as they get older financially, and making sure they're qualifying for the right benefits and making sure they have just all the right things in place that a family that has a child with special needs should have. So first of all, let's welcome Adam.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the opportunity.
No problem.
Ryan,
thanks for having me as well.
No problem. So let's just sort of get into it. ABLE account, we were sort of discussing before we started recording. How long have they been around? What's available now? What's going on with Maryland's plan?
So Maryland's plan, going back a little bit historically, it was enacted as the Achieving a Better Life Experience Act. So the ABLE account, signed into law December 19, 2014 by President Barack Obama. What it did is it allowed for each one of the states to set up a 529 style of savings account for individuals with children with disabilities. It said you have to have had a disability as defined by Social Security prior to you turning 26, and it set this up and said to each one of the states, go create your program. And so the 50 states and territories have the opportunity to do so. And I believe at this point, when we were talking, I think it's a total of 19 states that already have it set up.
Yeah.
Maryland, we're hoping will be the end of the year. Unfortunately, it's been a little bit of a moving target, but so there's some great resources already available through maryland529.com that they're already promulgating a lot of that information about ABLE accounts and how they're set up and who's going to be eligible for them.
Excellent. And I always tell people it's sort of like, years ago when they came up with the college savings plan, 529, it was a way to tax efficiently put money away for saving for college. This is sort of an offshoot of that, other than it just covers folks with disabilities.
Right. And so there are a couple key components to it. It allows a savings up to $100,000 before any of the money would actually impact anybody who would receive supplemental social income. Security income, excuse me. I know, right? Anybody who's receiving SSI. So you're able to make an annual contribution of $14,000 towards it, and you have a lifetime contribution of $350,000. And this is it's a really incredible tool that they're putting out there, because up until now it's really been the use of trusts.
Right.
It's been either first-party trusts or third-party trusts that you've had to utilize, and each one of them have their own pluses and minuses associated with administering a trust, cost of establishing a trust, and things of that nature.
And the whole idea behind that, a special needs trust of any type, there's cost on the front end to set up. And that's not to say just because there's a cost, it's something to avoid. But this is sort of an alternative where it's really no different than opening up a mutual fund account and starting to put as little as $25 or $50 a month into it.
Absolutely. The initial cost of some of the trusts shouldn't steer people away from when they're needed.
Right. And on our, one of the we're not going to get into too much of the technical aspects on our website, and on the show notes I'll post. We have a report called the 9 Things You Should Know About ABLE Accounts, and then we also have a comparison of a special needs trust versus an ABLE account, and there's uses obviously for both. You use both in your practice. We recommend both in our practice, so one is no better than the other. It's just a matter of trying to find the right fit for that situation.
Absolutely, and I think before we even started talking, one of the situations that I faced recently was an individual who really we were looking at doing a comparison of what would happen of using what is called a pooled special needs trust versus using an ABLE account.
Let's go into that, because I think that case, rather than going through, just the nuts and bolts of it, I think if people hear about a case, they're more likely to understand and apply it to their situation. So you're working on a case now where you're thinking about using an ABLE account, right?
Absolutely, and we're trying to do it as soon as possible. The concept is that child received $13,000 of an inheritance.
Okay.
Received it
How old is the
directly.
child?
The child is already in their 30s,
Okay.
but was diagnosed well younger than 26
Okay.
in order to be able to be deemed what would qualify under ABLE.
So you can be older than 26, you just have to be diagnosed earlier than 26.
That's right. The disability had to have been established prior to you turning 26 years old.
Okay, so this $13,000 inheritance then has created some problems.
It absolutely has. It has resulted in disqualification from her receiving SSI. And before she can requalify for SSI, we need to remove the money from being owned by her.
Okay.
Although she's had no control over it, it is still money that she owns. And so SSI cannot use it unless if she spends it all the way down so that she has below $2,500 or $2,000, in
Okay.
resources. Then we would need to reapply. The question is, how can we preserve this in the best and most cost-effective method?
And $13,000, I mean, it is a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, when you're talking trust work and a couple $1,000s, do what you have to do, it could very easily eat that down to nothing.
Absolutely. So that's why we didn't look at using something like what is called a D4A, first-party special needs trust, where you have to put together the trust. You name Medical Assistance Maryland's version of Medicaid as the beneficiary. Have to submit it to the Office of the Attorney General in order to get approval for the trust, and then moving the money into the trust and have it administered. With only it being $13,000, it's not a cost-effective trust to be able to administer. So we started looking at an alternative tool, a pool trust, where much smaller amounts of money are put into a pooled special needs trust, and it's made available still for the individual, but there's still costs establishing it with the pool trust,
Right.
as well as continuous maintenance. So what's the next option? And the next option really is the ABLE account. It's
Right.
not a lot of money. You take $13,000 and you place it into an ABLE account. You're able to preserve a lot more of that $13,000.
So let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of that. So Maryland doesn't have an ABLE account available now. They could choose another state, but let's say that this particular family decides to put the full amount into that ABLE account. And what exactly does that accomplish? I mean, what does that do for them?
It removes it as a resource.
Okay.
And when Social Security is looking at qualifying an individual for SSI, they're looking at, it's a means test. So they're looking at what do you have in terms of resources.
So this 30-year-old, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but a 30-plus-year-old person that's disabled, they can only have up to $2,000, right?
Right, $2,000 in resources, and they have it's a limitation on income as well. And so we can't really be able to get her requalified for SSI until she has resources below $2,000.
Okay.
The $13,000, putting the entirety into the ABLE account, it doesn't diminish her ability or her family's ability to draw on it for her ongoing care.
Okay. And let's talk about that a little bit. So withdrawing the money, how does the money come out? What are they allowed to use it for? What are the stipulations? Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, they're able to use, they look at for SSI, and SSI is specifically, you're able to use it for food, mortgage, rent. SSI is specifically qualified for dealing with shelter and food. If you use the money to pay for, let's say there's rent that's $1,000, and the individual already has the maximum SSI of $737.
Mm-hmm.
SSI can only be reduced by $265 if you're paying an overage to help cover for a better place to live.
Okay.
But really the idea is it also allows for dental care, buying a television, paying for a vacation, doing all of the things that are not specifically covered already by SSI.
Okay. So by having this money in the ABLE account, it doesn't reduce the SSI, right?
No, the idea is that it would only reduce SSI if the money being used from the ABLE account was going to be used towards things like food or shelter.
Okay. So that sounds like that's, I mean, that, to me, in a situation like this with the amount of money that we're talking and the situation, I mean, if you line up a special needs trust and a pooled special needs trust and an ABLE account, I mean, one pretty much makes itself the clear alternative.
It really does in this situation. If we had been looking at more of an immediate need and ABLE wasn't available in another state that we could still draw on, I probably would have recommended using the pooled trust. Also, if the family had a really strong imminent need to be able to receive the SSI.
Okay.
A lot of it also had to do with maintaining her on Medicaid. She has medical issues. In order to make sure that her prescriptions are covered, her doctor visits are covered, Medicaid, she was already automatically eligible because she was on SSI.
Mm-hmm.
Once she got removed from SSI, we had to go through the health exchange in order to get her qualified through a different means to make sure to maintain her Medicaid eligibility.
So I think a big lesson for people listening to this can be learned here is one of the first things that we talk about when I meet with families planning for special needs is, are there any potential inheritances that these kids are going to get? Because grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles say, I want to leave everybody the same amount, not knowing that, hey, if they leave a child with a disability money, it could blow up the plans that mom and dad are spending all this time and money to put in place.
It's one of the questions that I ask when I'm sitting down with grandparents. When I'm doing planning with grandparents who have young children or maybe even children that are in their teens or even 20s, the question is there anybody that has a disability? You have to be conscientious of this because you have the ability in the trust to establish, in the will to establish a trust for that child's benefit. Saying, okay, I'm going to remove that money. Mm-hmm. I'm going to allow it to be available for the child through what is called a third party special needs trust. It's not established by the individual. Mm-hmm. And it protects that money so that the child can still be able to utilize it without disqualifying them completely from receiving governmental benefits.
Yeah, and that's sort of, no good deed goes unpunished. But a lot of times when people don't know, they don't know, and it really can, mom and dad spend all the time to put the work in to do the plan, and then somebody with a really good intention comes along and terrible problem to have somebody leave you money, but it does screw things up.
And then all of a sudden you're going through $200,000 because grandma happened to do well. You're only one of a couple grandchildren, and
right.
And then all of a sudden all the money's gone.
We actually had that situation where you had to call back a client who was just getting onto a new 401k of her new job, and the first thing she did was put down her 3 daughters, and the first thing we had to tell when we met her was one of them was special needs, and we had the conversation about life insurance, but she forgot and just put her back on there again about the rules. So we called her up and made sure to let her know just in case she moves forward with that. So that's why planning seems to be crucial, because you don't know what you don't know, like you said. Oh, and
Brian, that's hitting the nail on the head. You have to be cognizant all the way through. It's great to go ahead and even put it in. Perfect example there. If mom has already established a special needs trust in her will, but then just makes daughter eligible to be able to receive that money, your whole plan has come unraveled. It's really important to match up the two, especially with individuals with disabilities.
And a trust, I very simply, my general knowledge of it, I always explain to people it's just a box. It just, you got to put stuff in the box to make it, to make it work. And if you have an empty box, it's only as good as an empty box.
Right. So if I had a child with special needs and I needed to create a special needs trust for their benefit, and I don't take at least $10 and put it in a dedicated account, I just wasted money.
Right.
I just handed over a few $1,000s to an attorney for not doing anything. It's important to fund these.
Yep. We see that a lot with living trusts. I've got a living trust. What's in there?
Yeah.
I don't know. Nothing. I look at all their accounts and statements, and there's not one thing titled in the name of the living trust, but they spent $3,000 or $4,000 to set it up.
Exactly. So you have to take the same steps that you would with a revocable trust, a living trust, that you have to take with an individual with disabilities. And even if you don't establish that third-party trust during the course of your lifetime, you can do it in the will.
Right.
And it's okay to establish it that way, and it'll get funded at that point, more likely than not,
Right.
at least.
That's a viable planning alternative. We were talking about, you said that this situation, when this young lady inherited the $13,000, it disqualified her for benefits. I mean, how long will it typically take for you to turn that around so that you can requalify her so that everything sort of gets put back to the way it was before she got the money?
The moment I remove the money, I can go ahead and reapply for SSI.
Okay, so if she inherits it in the middle of the month, and you put it in an ABLE account, you can go back and reapply.
So what's going to happen is you actually have a period of time to be able to handle that money. Okay. And so after that period of time, then it definitely becomes a defined resource for you.
Okay.
So if during that period of time, within the 6 months, you're able to take the money, put it in an ABLE account, you put it into a pooled a pooled special needs trust, something like that, you've now removed the money and you're not necessarily going to get disqualified from SSI. This unfortunate situation was the individual had received the money back in, I think, 2012 or 2013, had qualified for SSI, received SSI, then SSI became aware of this money, and it triggered an overpayment in excess of $30,000.
So how do they find out about this? I mean, do they audit these people? I mean, how does that $13,000 sort of poke its head up and say, hey, come here?
I think in this situation, it was actually a disclosure. The mother is an incredibly honest woman, and it had come up in conversation.
Okay.
Typically, though, it can go unfounded, but it's one of those things that in these situations, it is always better
Right. You don't
to
want
be
roll the dice on
upfront.
that, right?
Yeah.
Because that was now what are they coming after the people for the overpayment? Or
They only can go after the daughter.
okay.
And what they can do is they're going after the daughter, and I say going after in quotes, but they're trying to recoup the money.
Okay.
And so what they're maximum able to do is if she requalifies for SSI, they can get 10% for each
Okay.
SSI payment
So they'll
in
be
terms
there
of a
forever
repay.
paying that back,
Right.
$70 a month for
Exactly.
life, right?
Yeah, but she wasn't even receiving the full amount because of her disability. She was $400 or $500, whatever it was. So it's going to end up being only about $40, $50 a month.
If they are kicked off in November, are they able to get a check by December, or is it January or February more realistically to reapply and get their money back?
So if they're done in November, I'm going to reapply as of December. Essentially, I'm going to try as quickly in November to get the money removed.
Gotcha.
So that they see, and it may not be until December or January before you start seeing checks.
And why I brought that up is because one thing I thought about is my wife being a pharmacist and just thinking about medications all the time is some of them are extremely expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that if you get kicked off Medicaid, you're not only losing your payment, but you're stuck in a situation where you have to take your own money, pay for a very expensive medication for the months that you're stuck in limbo.
Yeah.
And then you basically have to reapply.
For this individual that I was talking about, she happens to have no income. She has nothing. So she was able to apply for Medicaid through alternative means. But
Okay.
that may not always be
Gotcha.
available for everybody.
Gotcha. And then does she have to go through her process where it takes some time, or is she planning these things, or is it kind of like
They were able to
are you going without medication until you're hustling and trying to make sure that you're...
They were able to, social services, I got to give a lot of credit to social services. They were able to work with her, be able to get it done. I had started the application, so social services was able to get it all the way, the rest of the way through. They did a bang-up job. She didn't even see a lapse.
That's
So
good.
there are resources for those
Sounds
that
like
are
they're
impoverished.
reasonable for situations like this.
Yes.
You're not just stuck on your own.
That's
good.
right. Especially with, it's not like she had a ton of money that she was sitting on, or a family that's
Right.
insanely wealthy that would be able to pay for these medications. The mother's biggest fear, her biggest apprehension that she repeated to me over and over and over again was, how am I going to pay for her medications? That was the biggest fear.
So this is all great information. I mean, we sort of started talking about ABLE accounts and brought a case study into it, and have really gotten off, not off topic, but off on a lot of different tangents that as you can see, this is complicated planning. And Adam Zimmerman, an attorney that specializes in this, he's here to help. If you've heard something you like and you want to get in touch with Adam, we'll give his contact information. He's in Towson. His phone number is 410-296-6777. Give him a call. You can ask him questions. I'm sure he's more than happy to walk you through all your different options and tell you how he might be able to help you. But it's tough to find somebody that doesn't know somebody with a disability these days. I mean, I have a child with autism. He's 6. It's opened my eyes to the community of just the autism community. I've gotten involved with different boards and organizations and just met a lot of people, and it's it's staggering that you don't know what you don't know, and this type of planning, if you don't do it, it can really screw things up. I mean, these children that kids that can't plan for themselves turn into adults that can't plan for themselves, and it's really on us, the parents, to do this work for them, and we owe it to them. And it's not very hard, and it's not very expensive, and you really need to, if you don't know what you're doing, find a professional that can help. Let's sort of, we're at about 20 minutes, so I think we wrap this up. Adam, do you have any other ABLE account information that we haven't hit on yet? Anything, any special needs planning in general that you'd like to share that can sort of...
I think we've hit on a lot of kind of the very baseline level of information. A lot of this is nuanced and gets more technical, and I'm more than happy to...
Yeah, we don't want to put people to sleep.
Right, exactly. More than happy to sit down with anybody in order to be able to help them understand as to what some of the planning looks like, what you might need. And it's important, just as Colin was talking about in terms of attorneys, but it's really important, good financial planners who have a good understanding to be able to help you navigate in this area. So I think it's incredibly worthwhile to make sure you take the time, at least have the conversation.
Right.
And if you can't do it this second, I can understand, but at least look at the resources that are available to you as you are planning for your family, as you move forward.
Good deal. And like I said, on our website or on the show notes of here, we're going to put Adam's contact information. We're going to put a couple of things on ABLE accounts. That's at MarylandFinancialAdvocates.com. And you can just go download that information, and I would highly recommend it. Adam doesn't do what I do, and I don't do what he does. I don't do any of the legal work, and he doesn't do any of the financial stuff. So we'll start wherever it is that you want to start, and whatever issue is pressing at that point. But just go ahead and get started is the advice both of us, or all three of us, can give you. So that will be it for this episode of the podcast. Adam, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Ryan, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, guys, have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Special Needs Connection. Be sure to head over to MarylandFinancialAdvocates.com to download the notes and resources from this episode. You can also subscribe to future episodes in iTunes.